Hello, and welcome to the Beauty Ritual Podcast. I'm your host, Eva. Welcome to the place where we discuss age, beauty, and identity in a world where the pressure to conform rises every day. This is your dose of perfection correction. And today, my guest is Chelsea Aguilar, an absolutely gorgeous singer, actress, coquette, and a health coach who's here to discuss a topic many of you have secretly discussed with your hairdresser, or with me if I'm your hairdresser, or your girlfriends if you just keep it top secret. And the topic is going gray. Thank you for being here, Chelsea. How are you?
I'm good, Eva. Thank you for having me.
Yes. I'm so happy to have someone who can really help us dive into something that everyone who covers their grays has thought about secretly or talked to me about, which is like, what if I wanted to grow out my gray? What would that be like?
Yeah. And actually, I remember when we met and you were very cool about asking me if you could ask me about my hair. And
hair is sensitive to me. I feel like if you're going to talk about it or touch it, you better get that permission.
Mm-hmm. I agree. So I'm excited to be here and to have this conversation.
Yes. I mean, listen, for those of you out there, out in audio land, Chelsea is so beautiful. It's wild. She like makes you want to go gray. Even if you don't have gray hair, you're like, oh my God, this is like the best look ever.
Thank you.
When did it start happening for you? When did you start, for noticing your first grays?
So I was a teenager when I first started noticing gray hairs, and at that point I would pick them out, like I would pluck them.
Okay.
But I was probably 17.
Wow.
And yeah, in fact, when my mom had me, at that point, women would stop dyeing their hair when they were pregnant because there weren't products that were safe. And so there's a picture of my mom and I at my baptism, and she's fully white.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
it's genetic.
It is genetic. I was just a teenager, and both my sister and my brother are like salt and pepper.
Wow.
As well, yeah. So we are a family of white-haired people.
So did you ever start dyeing it?
I did. I started dyeing my hair probably in my late teens. Yeah.
Were you highlighting? Were you doing a base color? Like, what did you choose to do? Were you trying to look as naturally yourself as possible? Or were you like, you know what, I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to just try some different colors.
So at that point, I would alternate between going to the salon and box dyeing my hair myself. But my natural color originally was like a dark brown. So I would do like dark brown to like almost black when I was dyeing my hair. Yeah.
A lot of people don't go through that as early as you did. So I think that the psychology is also different there, because if you've lived like more the majority of your life with like your natural hair, you probably have different feelings about it when you start to get them. Like I have my own like few gray hairs, but I've only just started to get them in like 2020. And I don't really mind them. I'm like, oh, hey guys, like I feel like, whoa, I've, kind of lived my life, and like it's part of that, right? It feels like a wholesome thing. But how did you feel as a teen to like see that?
Yeah, so at that time it was probably like mid to late 2000s. So
this is like Y2K then.
Yeah, so
full blown.
It wasn't like a socially acceptable thing at that time to have gray hair.
Did people make comments?
Yeah.
Not to put all of you who made comments on blast or anything.
A lot of people did make comments.
Rude.
And you know, before I started dyeing my hair, I would be like, it's not gray, it's silver. Like, I would like try to make it cool. But I definitely caved and started dyeing my hair. And
From pressure or from how you felt? Did you feel
well, I
like,
think both.
okay,
I was a very not naive, but like at that time in my life, fitting in was really important to me. And so I felt the pressure of what back then I was told beautiful was.
mm,
And it wasn't beautiful to be like a 17, 20, 23-year old with gray hair.
yeah.
So, you know, I think there's a big part of me that has always wanted to love myself exactly as I am and to embrace all of myself, and to proudly like flaunt the things that are unique. But I wasn't confident enough at that point in my life to do that.
We're just hearing you say that. I feel that like that emotion. It feels so good to even want it and to
Mm-hmm.
realize that you want to like love all the things that make you you instead of trying to change them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, like I love my hair now. During COVID, a lot of people grew out their gray hair and embraced it, and I love that trend that happened.
Yeah.
But when I did decide to embrace my hair and grow it out about 8 years ago, it still wasn't cool. Like it
Right.
wasn't a cool thing to do at that point. And I grew it out. So I had like chocolate brown hair and platinum white roots, and it was not cute for a really long time.
This is what people come to me and talk to me about and what holds them back a lot of the time because that process, once you get through it, it's golden. But
Mm.
that is extremely difficult. And from my end, there's only a few things that you can really do. You can kind of make it a Billie Eilish moment, Billie Eyelash, where she had that two tone. You
Yeah.
can almost make the bottom like black, like pitch black, and it looks like that look of growing this like straight root out. Remember when she had the black roots and the
And green,
green?
yeah.
Yeah, it was like a vibe. You can do that with like making a dramatic tone. Some people bleach the ends out. If their hair
Mm-hmm.
can handle it, they get like platinum and they grow it out that way. But a lot of people feel really daunted by the process either way.
Yeah.
What kept you going?
That's a good question. I think I was just done. I think I was just tired of hiding, tired of feeling like I was trying to like please other people. Um, it was very much like a life changing experience for me, and I've always had really long hair. My hair's pretty long. I've always had really long hair,
Yeah.
and after probably growing it out to about here, I got a lob. So
Okay.
I did have like that.
To cut off the color, you're saying.
Mhm.
Okay, so you grew it out halfway, like to your jawline,
Well,
and then you
probably,
cut it
yeah, it
all
was
the
probably,
color off.
I cut not all of the color, but I'd say it was like 50-50.
Okay.
So I got to a certain point, and then I had them cut like a good amount of the dyed hair off. But
Just being able to cut it, by the way, really shows how ready you are because I've done this process with a few clients and they'll still just keep growing it because they really love the long hair.
mhm.
They'll just keep like, I don't know, braiding it, putting it up, finding different ways, but it's really bold to go even a step further and say like, cut it off.
Mhm.
Let's go.
Yeah, yeah, and I've heard a few people say that they tried a thing where like they would dye like just this part and part it and let the hair underneath grow out.
What?
Yeah,
I've
there's
seen the opposite.
oh really?
I've seen this actually looked amazing. This woman, she took like the halo top like portion where her part was out and started to grow that out gray and dyed the underneath dark. Almost like a Michelle Visage. Have you watched Drag Race?
No.
Girl, Michelle Visage is so hot. And she has this like shock of silver hair.
Okay.
And then the rest is black.
Huh.
It's so dynamic and cool. It's one of my favorite things. And I've seen people do it when they have this like shock of gray and then underneath their natural color. So we kind of define it by dyeing a little bit of where it's salt and pepper, whatever their natural color was, so that it stands out more.
Okay. You know who I was thinking about actually recently, who I don't know if her hair, I think it was gray, Stacey Clinton. Did you ever used to watch What Not to Wear?
Yeah.
I think Stacey had
a shock of gray.
And I always, like, I hate to admit it, but I always was like, what is that?
Were you hating on her?
Yeah.
So was I.
But I loved the show, and in hindsight,
because it was really unaccepted then, and the peer pressure of it, I succumbed.
I was so enrolled in it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, she was a legend.
100%. Correct. Why did we not hate on who was the judge on America's Next Top Model who had the gorgeous silver hair? Because I don't think it was dyed. I think he had actually gray hair. Were there two J's, and one of them had the like short clipper cut silver hair?
I don't know, but isn't everything more acceptable for a man?
I mean,
like, because salt and pepper was always hot on a man.
Yeah.
It always was.
I guess hair dye for guys also took a long time to come around, because you either had shoe polish black or nothing, or like red, right? Because we didn't have a lot of the color technology that we do now. Mm-hmm. So guys were really, if they wanted to dye their hair, they had very unnatural options.
Yeah.
Like now we have these amazing colors that we can watch within a second of like exactly where we want them to hit on, like if they want to even do a darker gray and they don't want to be completely white. Like we can detail it to the finest amount. But back then, shoe polish black, baby.
Yeah, and also I think men have such shorter hair and probably get it cut more. Well, you would know better than I do, but my very little experience with men's hair. I imagine.
Have you ever cut a boyfriend's hair?
No, but one time recently I was trimming my dad's hair for him, and I didn't realize I had to put a thing on the end of the...
Oh no, you didn't put a guard on the clipper?
I didn't put a guard on the clipper and went right up the back of his head, and I was like, oh.
Was it bald?
It was pretty short.
I'm living for this.
Yeah.
Oh no!
But it was, I mean, he was cool about it, and...
That's very sweet.
But I was like, oh my god, I can't believe I just did that.
I love, like, home haircut stories, and so the pandemic had so many. It was a wonderful story era for me, because I felt like, first of all, you bond with the person, and there's, like, this giggly thing that happens. Like, even if you're messing up, you're, like, doing them a favor. It's just I think it's a wonderful bonding moment to have a home haircut.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's sweet. But don't stay out there doing that, okay? Come to me, please. I don't need you to look foolish.
Yeah, I give people a lot of credit who try to cut their own hair or cut someone else's. So
there's some guys that can throw down a fade on their own hair. Okay? But enough about the boys.
I can't even style my own hair. So
how do you just wake up and look gorgeous like this? She grew out her gray and just wakes up gorgeous every day.
Well, I think part of what works for me is that my hair is thick and really long. And unless it's really humid, my hair is generally, like, tamed-ish. And so I just don't have the energy to really take the time to learn how to do anything with my hair, but I'd love to do more with it. And in fact, you had mentioned heatless curlers.
Mm-hmm. I did.
And so I bought one of those, like, things.
Oh, you actually did? Did you try it?
I did, and it was really hard to sleep in. But also, my hair is really thick, and so it was wet. And my hair was still wet when I took it out.
Well, we're gonna get into some of the finer tips, the tips and tricks with that situation.
Great.
But one of the things that surprises people about having gray hair when their hair starts to turn gray, and you probably learned this lesson much earlier, that actually ties into the heatless curlers situation, is that gray hair is a completely different texture than melanated hair, because essentially what it is the melanation process of your hair is turned off, right, and it's producing a clear hair, basically. So you have probably a completely different texture.
It is.
Yeah.
What's interesting actually is that the like white hair on top is still pretty straight, but in certain spots it's really kinky. It is absolutely like a completely different. It's like someone else's hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you were completely gray by what age? 20s?
It's been like this. Well, I guess it was hard to tell. I stopped dyeing my hair when I was 27, I think.
Okay.
And at that point, my roots were so noticeable that like it was like I looked like a skunk, kind of. So it was like this
because much. You were probably like so tied into getting your base done. You were like, and every 2 weeks, like having to cover it.
No, I wasn't. I was not good about. So really? I have pictures, and it may as well have been during the grow out process, because my roots, like I probably had like this much root at certain times. Yeah.
I mean, look, everyone has a different tolerance for it. And I think that because it happened to you at such a young age, it makes sense to me that you were like comfortable with your roots, because you're starting to get more comfortable with where you were faster, because you're spending more time there. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I notice is when people are ready to make that leap, they just understand and accept like, wow, this is really like my hair. Mm-hmm. This is where I am, where I sit. And they start to just get comfortable there. And they don't feel so attached to the color to hide it, right? Yeah. Because when you're still in that, like, I'm going to cover my hair every 2 weeks, right? A lot of people are there. Maybe, you didn't quite sit in that point, but a lot of people cover their hair every 10 days.
I know. I just didn't have it in me. A big part of it was laziness, but I owe my sister a lot of credit actually, because I was home for Christmas back in Philly, which is where I'm from, and I guess we started having the conversation, and Game of Thrones had just come out. Mm-hmm. Like it was a brand new series. I think season 1 was out, and I'm drawing a blank on the lead.
Daenerys Targaryen.
So, the lead female character has this gorgeous white hair.
Yeah.
And my sister was like, you'd probably look a lot like that. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to grow my hair out.
By the way,
really, it was kind of a nudge from her, and
it might have been a nudge, but what struck me is if you had always covered your gray because other people had made comments, it was never truly coming from you. So I wouldn't even call you lazy that you weren't covering your roots. To me, that is like, I actually don't want to dye my hair.
Yeah.
Because it's like, you don't have the motivation to do the thing if it's pressure from other people, because you actually do feel okay with yourself. You like who you are. You're okay with it, right? I don't think that's laziness. I think that's confusion and learning to listen to yourself rather than listening to the people around you.
Absolutely. And You're right. I actually don't like using that word to describe myself or anyone else. I just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I think there was a part of me that was over trying to keep up with people pleasing.
And thankfully the world changed, because I bet you anything, you get so many compliments now.
I do. I get at least two compliments a day. And one of them is usually, I have to ask you,
What do they ask?
is that your natural color? And so today, I was at the dog park and this guy came up and he was like, I have to ask you. And I was like, yes, it is. He didn't
Honestly,
even get the whole sentence out.
thank God for change.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Thank God for change.
Yeah, and it's a great conversation starter. Um, it's always a compliment. I can remember like the three times that someone over the however many years that someone had asked me about my hair, and it was followed with something that like wasn't really a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
People are really kind. They're curious. They're inspired, and I love meeting people. I love talking to strangers. I love an opportunity to like get to know someone new and to connect with someone. And I think it's really cool that I actually have this natural conversation starter on my head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hair is so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And embracing what's working for you is really powerful.
Yeah.
I find that super inspiring. But if you went back in time to little teenage Chelsea, and you told her you were living this life, like, what would her reaction be?
Huh, that's a great question because I'm so different than I was. And there are a lot of factors that go into that. That's, probably a conversation for another time. But um, my hair is definitely only a piece of what makes me who I am today. Um,
That's massive.
yeah, I'm continuing today still to become more and more myself. And um, the person that we met through Jamie, one of his first workshops that I did, my intention was to meet myself, to like really meet myself, and I felt like um, I feel like that's happening. Like I'm finally truly seeing who I am, and it's beautiful, and I like who I am. Like I'm really excited about the person that I'm becoming, about the person that I have become. And every day I remind myself, I don't want to look at the ground. I want to make eye contact. I want to smile at people. I want to be approachable. I want to make people's day better. I want to have a positive impact on people, and um, I want the people that I encounter to really feel like I saw them and that they mattered.
What you're illustrating so beautifully is it's no longer about being consumed with how you look, right?
Yeah.
You've moved beyond that, and it's like about expressing yourself and being in your inner system and like reaching out into the world and living, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a beautiful part of accepting yourself, your physical appearance, that I think all of us go through in a different way, especially starting in our teens, because at that age you're really focused on like, what do I look like, right? What do other
Yeah.
people think of how I look? That's like, it's so basic, right? But it's very surface, and sometimes people go through their whole life in that one spot, and they never like evolve past it. And to be able to go back and like look at your younger self and be like, hey, look at like where I've evolved and how beautiful that is, and it's so much more than my hair.
Mm-hmm.
It's so much more than my body. It's so much more than any of those things that were such a big focus.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
like a huge, huge blessing and a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's so true. And I actually don't know if I answered your question before about, um, being a teenager and what, the teenage me would think about my life today. But
I mean, I think you answered it perfectly. I think that was like gorgeous. And I think we're always evolving in that vein. It's never finished, but to just even be able to realize that you've like changed courses over time and gained wisdom, it's huge. And to even just have someone else out there realize that that's possible, or that you could even think of something different than just how you look.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is inspiring, to just know like there's something a little bit more out there. There's more within you.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's very deep.
Yeah. And, when I was a teenager, the most important things to me were fitting in and how I looked.
Girl, work, me too.
They really went hand in hand. And while...
and if you say yours weren't out there, I hear you. I hear you saying like, not me. Okay, how dare you? How dare you, try and pretend, girl. We all wanted to be liked. We still have moments now that we want to be liked, and that becomes the most important thing. And then we have to remember, hey, there are other things I've gained. You can't forget to remember.
Right, and it's, it has flipped now to like, do I like myself?
Yeah.
Do I like myself? That is so much more important to me than do they like me?
Yes.
And even like these days, as I have come to realize that I'm getting a little bit older, things about me are going to continue to change. Like my appearance is going to continue to change. And how I look is the least important thing about me. However, it still matters to me. And for me, putting effort into my appearance is a way that I love myself. It's not something that I spend a ton of time doing. Like I said, I really can't be bothered a lot of the time to do anything with my hair. But I do feel more confident going out into the world when I feel good about how I look.
Well, presenting yourself is a wonderful thing. I mean, why do you think I, love hair? I love makeup. I love fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, all about presentation. But what you're saying is essentially what I love understanding and I love talking about, is that you're coming from a fulfilled place first. You're coming from, I'm whole, I'm enough, I'm explored, I'm lived inside myself, and then I present myself. Because what we get backwards so quickly in a world of social media and like all of this glitz and this glam is that the outside comes first. Mm-hmm. That's the confusion, is that like, oh, the hair makes me feel whole, or the makeup makes me feel whole, or like, any augmentations or da-da-da. None of those things are bad. Yeah. Present yourself in the way that you love yourself, right? Yeah. But start there first. And sometimes you have to learn that lesson. I think most people do. I definitely had to, where you're young and you have to go through life and live a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. But we can't, and to me, I feel like very strongly about remembering that it's inside first. Yeah. Because we're advertised to so strongly. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, and I have so much compassion for the teenage me. I really do. I have so much compassion for her because I was really insecure. I didn't know myself. I was really insecure. I already said that fitting in was the most important thing to me, but also I didn't know who I was, and I was trying to figure that out by trying to fit into boxes. And when I hear people talk about what other people do, to their bodies as far as, whether it is like augmentation or anything really. My stance on that is if it is going to make you more confident, like if you do feel truly like that is something that will help you to
stand strong,
and like
right? If it's dyeing your hair,
like
yeah,
go for it. I try really hard not to have an opinion on what someone else is doing.
I agree with you, and you can see it. Like if their thing is like, I will dye my hair until I am 90 and I'm going to put lipstick on the day that I go, right? Like if that is your presentation and it's true for you, stand on it.
Yeah.
I love that.
My grandmother wore this amazing hot pink lipstick, like pretty much until the day she died when she was 91.
Really?
And it's something that we talk about all the time.
Yeah.
It was very cool. She was a beautiful, beautiful woman.
What was her name?
We called her Hugs.
Really?
Yeah, we called her Hugs.
That's so sweet.
But her name was Pat.
Like Patricia?
It was Patricia, yeah.
Work. I love a Patricia.
Who doesn't?
Honestly, though, really, if you know a Patricia, you know what we're talking about, girl. I love that. Mm-hmm. I love that she, like, that was her, like,
yeah.
Her Superwoman little emblem was that pink lipstick.
Yeah. And she had the same hairstyle for a really long time. It was like this white, like close to her head. She would go, I think, every week and get her hair done, and it was like solid.
I love that.
Yeah.
My grandma's just like that too.
Yeah.
Like white, or like a little roller set. She wears it every week.
Yeah.
She actually had a hairdresser for 25 years who moved away out here to California. My grandmother lives in Michigan. And it was like she was getting a divorce. She like called me and she's like, Julie moved away.
How dare she?
It was a literal like marriage that had dissolved.
Yeah. That's hard. I mean, when you find a good hairstylist, you stay with them. I know this.
Right?
Yeah.
It's magical. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask two things. First of all is, what would you say to someone that is ready to grow their hair out and they're like, how do I get through this? How do I get to the other side? How do I cross this like river?
So I think everything is about perspective. And when you make that decision, I encourage you to just go for it. I mean, I know that sounds easier said than done, but what your hair looks like today, tomorrow, and like for the next couple of months doesn't mean anything about you. And if it's something that you really feel like you're ready to do, then it's not going to the grow out process isn't going to be any different in like 2 years than it would be today.
And so, if not now, when? It's one of those things. Like, if you're there, you're there.
Yeah, I just encourage you to say F it and go for it. And if it helps, like, put on some earrings and some lipstick and make it a statement. But
I've got to be honest, I have a thing for like dyeing the ends black. I think it looks sickening.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think like do the Billie Eilish if you're growing it out.
Yeah, and you know, I've seen women who will like French braid their hair so that it looks different depending on how you style your hair, where like the gray falls. Or, you know, if it really feels uncomfortable, throw a hat on every day for, 6 months if you must, or get a pixie cut, or, I think that there are some really great like root spray options these days. It's completely different than it was for me, or at least if they're worth tools, like I didn't know about them.
Sure.
So I encourage you to just go for it, and There also are communities online that I found years later for people who are in the process of growing out their hair just for like
a support group.
Yeah,
that is so cute. I didn't know
know.
that existed.
Yeah, and
is it like Reddit? Is it Tumblr?
There's a Facebook group.
Girl,
yeah, there's a Facebook group.
That's
there
cute.
are tons of women on Instagram. Literally, you can search like gray hair. There are tons of women on Instagram, and I also have occasionally worked with some women who just wanted some extra support and encouragement when it came to embracing their hair. And
that's great.
Yeah, and I think that there's a level of healing that we all get to do around the fear maybe that we have of what it means about us or what other people are going to think.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing for me for a really long time. So
I feel like when your identity becomes your own versus what you think it should be.
Yeah.
Is like must be a super pivotal moment.
Mm-hmm.
Especially in regards to your appearance, because there's one thing when you have an internal change, people can't really see you going through that. But when you are, you can't hide, you're sort of bare and the world can see you go through that process. It's a big moment.
Mm-hmm.
And now my last question, darling, is what is a beauty myth that you didn't know was a myth when you were young, that now you have lived some life, you realize that wasn't true at all?
Oh, okay, this is kind of vulnerable, but I'm gonna go for it.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna assume that no one's gonna be uncomfortable with this, but it just has to do with body shape, I guess. And I feel really, really grateful that I have done as much growing and healing in my life as I have. And it certainly was not, it has not been a comfortable process, but I wouldn't change a thing because, like I said, I'm really happy with who and where I am today. But I was just like a really confused young person. And when I was a teenager, there was a boy, another teenager, who spread this rumor that I had saggy boobs. And I believed that about myself for like 15 years.
Oh my God.
And it wasn't until, and like, I wouldn't let anyone see me because I was like so ashamed and embarrassed. And so I was changing in front of a friend one day. I think I was like 30.
Yeah.
And she was like, "You have great boobs." And I was like,
did your world just shatter into a million pieces?
I believed for 15 years that I had saggy boobs because one boy said it.
Yeah.
And that was like, yeah, like earth shattering, just to realize like
beauty myths are so wild.
How I made something a fact about myself. And it affected how I lived. And so I just want to,
beauty can do that.
Yeah, I want to encourage people to like ask is this true about me? I mean, sure, try something on. Like if someone says like, "Hey, I didn't really like how you said that thing." I'll check in and be like, is that true? Was I like kind of rude? And if there's a chance that I was, like I want to be kind. I want to be a kind person.
Well, to have people realize that that there's even a possibility that a thing like that could be a myth. Yes. Like literally untrue. Like people don't realize, and especially when we're young, we do not realize that there are such things as a beauty myth. Yeah. Right? It is not true that being a size 2 is the only way to be beautiful.
Totally.
Complete myth.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I really love and appreciate about your podcast is that we get to start questioning these things because it is pivotal to not just young women, unfortunately. Like, I am still trying to learn how to love my body exactly as it is.
Welcome.
And it may be
Welcome,
a
girl,
lifelong journey.
Because we're always going to be changing, right?
We're always going to be changing. But I think the reason why it's so important for me today is because, there are moments where it still affects how I live, like whether I feel comfortable going to the beach with my friends.
Yeah.
And it's hard to admit that, but it's true. And I don't want to have these things that are not true about me running my life anymore.
Well, the funny thing is there's no Harry Potter office that runs the beauty myth department, right? So, nobody's putting out a fucking newsletter, and we're just out here believing anything at random. And that's why even being able to bring it up and have you be brave enough to say these things is you're saying what a lot of people are thinking and feeling, and they don't really quite know how to vocalize it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or some people do know and they keep it inside because they feel like it's not a safe place to do it. And maybe it's not a safe place for them, right? But the more that we have these normalized ways of understanding and sharing, I think we can move past it into, who knows, something new at least.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see what's beyond that.
Yeah.
What is probably more life.
Mm-hmm.
And more enjoyment.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm not focused on how I look, I'm present, I'm playful, I'm available for the person that's in front of me. And I do I want to enjoy life. I want to play, I want to laugh, I want to have good deep conversations and yeah, and I will say I think that younger people today are having a different experience than, someone maybe closer to our age. Or I think you're actually a few years younger than me. But at least, someone my age. Some of this stuff is deeply ingrained.
Yeah.
And it makes me really hopeful that, I see younger people on social media confidently wearing what they want and looking hot doing it, no matter how, what their shape or size is, and
pushing boundaries a little bit.
And I envy that. It's really interesting to be there's a lot for me to learn from younger people.
Ooh, I feel that way too, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really, really do. Yeah. I love younger people. I think that they, are incredible and something that I want to know more about.
Mm-hmm.
And all of your strange words, okay? You're going to have to explain a lot to me, okay? I'm going to need the dictionary. Chelsea, thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing about your hair. I know that's a huge deal, and I think it's going to make a huge difference for people who don't really have a place to talk about it or to hear about it or someone like you to talk to or support them through it. And I think that you give so much knowledge and a landing place for people that are either have this in the back of their head or they've been curious about it or they're I'm ready to go through it. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for sharing every last detail.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So tell us, where can we find you? What you're up to?
Yeah. So, like you said when you introduced me, I am a coach for women, and you can find me on, I do have a private Instagram account, but if you follow me and you have a real account, I will follow you back. And my account is Chelsea, CHELSEAH, Aguilar, AGUILAR.
And if I called you Christina Aguilera in the beginning, it was not my fault.
You didn't, but actually someone the other day was like, oh, like Christina Aguilera. And I was like, wow, I haven't gotten that since like 7th grade. But,
oh no. Well, thank you again.
No, thank
Follow
you so
Chelsea.
much for having me.
She's incredible. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode of the Beauty Ritual podcast. We will catch you next time. You know where to find us. Spotify, iTunes, Apple, Reddit, Alibaba, Temu. What are the new ones? TikTok. We love you. Bye. Mwah.